Now, I bet you a lot of people in the opening for their reviews on this film were like, I got a bad feeling about this. But you know what I'm gonna say? I have this strange hunch that this guy right here, he's feeling like a star, and you can't stop his shine. I mean, just look at him. He's loving Cloud9. His head's in the sky.
I'm solo, I'm hot solo, I'm hot solo, I'm hot solo, solo. I'm picking up my plaster, putting it on my side, I'm jumping in my falcon.
Hey guys, the Black Critic Guy, and I'm here today to review the latest Star Wars film titled Solo, a Star Wars Story. So Solo, a Star Wars Story is exactly what you thought it was going to be. It tells the origin story of Han Solo, where he was from, how he got his name, how he met Chewie, how he became a smuggler, how he obtained the Millennium Falcon, how he met Lando Calrissian, etc, etc, etc. Now, considering that this film came out last Thursday, and I'm only reviewing it now on Monday, Memorial Day at 2:27 in the afternoon my time, you can clearly tell that I had no interest in seeing Solo, a Star Wars Story. After months of hearing all the production issues that plagued this film, the fact that they fired Phil Lord and Chris Miller, Alden Ehrenreich couldn't act, which I don't think it's that he couldn't act, he just couldn't pull off a good Harrison Ford impersonation, and that's their level of acting that they were looking for this actor, and he just couldn't do it right. And then after the train wreck that was The Last Jedi, I just didn't have any interest in going back to this universe. I was kind of burnt out on Star Wars. But I knew a lot of you were interested to hear what I thought about the film, so I forced myself to go to the theater and watch Solo, a Star Wars Story. And let me tell you, I was not looking forward to it. But I was genuinely surprised that the film wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to be. Although, it wasn't a good film either. So what, pray tell, were some of the good elements I took away from Solo, a Star Wars Story? Well, for one, I really liked the way that they handled and displayed Han and Chewie's relationship throughout the film. It felt exactly like their relationship from the original trilogy, and it was the most believable, well-developed, and genuine relationship in the entire film. But that's not to say that it was all good, as it had a very rocky start. The way that these two meet each other and then end up teaming up, I didn't like it. I didn't buy it, and I kind of wish that they met in different circumstances, because that was just way too over the top, and it just didn't make any sense to me. But after their first meeting, it was smooth sailing for both of them. I hate to jump on this bandwagon, but I do agree with everyone that Donald Glover is the best performance in this film. My goodness, he pulls off a near flawless Billy D. Williams impersonation. From the attitude to the charisma to even the voice. Now, sometimes I did hear Donald Glover's voice, but he did a really good job at impersonating Billy D. Williams' speech patterns, his smooth voice, all that stuff. He knocked it out of the park here. I didn't see Donald Glover. I saw a young Lando Calrissian. I was super impressed. Good job, Donald Glover. The other solid performance in the film, strangely enough, is Paul Bettany's. And I say strangely enough for two particular reasons. One, if you were to take away Paul Bettany's performance or replace Paul Bettany with another actor, the character would come off as this bland, stoic antagonist that isn't all that interesting outside of the way that his face looks. Other than that, there's not much to the character. But because of Paul Bettany's performance, he really brought life to the character, made it his own, and had so much fun with it. And secondly, the character is only in a grand total of 2 scenes. Just 2. But in those 2 scenes, he was the only character that had my undivided attention. I could not take my eyes off of this character, and it's mostly due to Paul Bettany's performance. I quite enjoyed some of the action set pieces in the film, particularly the two chase scenes. The first, where Han is escaping on a speeder car, not only was exhilarating, but does an excellent job visually at displaying how proficient of a driver/pilot Han truly is through his maneuvering and quick thinking. Instead of telling us that he's a great pilot, which unfortunately the film still does, I guess they just have to hammer it into us because we clearly didn't get it from that first opening sequence, but it also shows us that he's a great pilot. The second chase scene, and by far the best action sequence in the entire film, is the Kessel Run. Everything about the Kessel Run is excellent. I loved every single moment of it. It was gripping, it was thrilling, it was intense, the visuals were on point. Everything about the Kessel Run, I liked. And the last thing I liked about Solo: A Star Wars Story was the score by John Powell. He does a great job at composing the music, and there was a theme that played whenever you would see the Marauders, those people right here with the helmets. There's a theme that plays whenever they would show up that I really liked. It really stuck out to me because it's the most unique score I've heard in a Star Wars film since Episode 3. But of course, there are a bunch of problems that plague Solo: A Star Wars Story. The biggest one of them all, and this is something I've heard from a bunch of people already, and let me tell you, they undersold the shit out of this character because she is far worse than I could have possibly imagined. And that's L3. She may be, no, scratch that, she is the worst Star Wars character I have ever seen. Yes, even worse than Jar Jar Binks. Because at least Jar Jar was a character. He was a bad character, but he was a character. L3 is not a character. She's an agenda disguised as a character. And I'm not kidding, guys. I'm being 100% serious when I say that L3 is the worst character I've ever seen in the Star Wars universe. And you can't even categorize her as a character, as she has no personality, no traits. Everything that you can say about the character can be explained through a political agenda or a political ideal that skews very left. She spends a majority of this film spewing out bullshit rhetoric that has nothing to do with the plot, like droid rights, fight against the oppressors, you gotta free the robots and free the droids, we need our own rights, no one tells me what to do. What? Droid rights? Really? Is that where we're going with the Star Wars universe now that Disney owns them? We're gonna be talking about droid rights? That might be the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard and seen in a Star Wars film. And that is saying a lot. Thank the Lord that this character dies at the end of the second act. And yes, I am spoiling that so that you guys can at least feel relieved that you don't have to bear with the character for the duration of the film. No. She bites the dust by the end of the second act and we don't have to deal with her in the third act whatsoever. And also, fuck that character. While on the subject of characters, Emilia Clarke's character is not only bland, uninteresting, boring, and forgettable, she's also useless and superfluous to the plot. She honestly did not need to be in this film. If you were to remove her character and start the film off with Han being a loner, then he bumps into Chewie, then bumps into Woody Harrelson's character, and the three of them go off on adventures, the film would have gone off without a hitch. In fact, it probably could have shaved 20 or 30 minutes off of the film and helped with the abysmal pacing. And it didn't help the character's case that Emilia Clarke's performance in the film was wooden and devoid of any intrigue, charm, or charisma. I never bought her in the role, thus I never cared for the character. I never bought any sort of chemistry between her and Alden Ehrenreich, thus I never bought any chemistry between her character and Han Solo. It's a frivolous relationship that means absolutely I had a huge problem with the overall writing. Mostly because it relied heavily on expositional diarrhea, characters explaining who they are, what they can do well, who that person is. Not to mention that some of the dialogue scenes, particularly with Han and his girlfriend, were very hokey and unbelievable. It doesn't sound like something that Han would say to a character. And that's a damn shame, considering that Lawrence Kasdan co-wrote this film, and if there's one person that knows how to write Han Solo well, it's Lawrence Kasdan. Maybe that was his son Jonathan who wrote those scenes. That's why they came off so hokey and unbelievable. So after watching this film, I have to be honest, I still don't buy Alden Ehrenreich as a young Han Solo. I'm sorry, man. You tried your damnedest, but it just didn't register with me. I wasn't convinced whatsoever. In fact, many times throughout the film, I completely forgot that he was playing a young Han Solo. I thought he was just some random smuggler character who's also proficient at flying that happens to pal around with a Wookiee as well. It was only when someone would call him Han or Han, as Lando would call him, which clever callback, I love that. But other than that, he just never came off as Han Solo to me. There is 2 moments in the film where I sort of believed that he was Han Solo, but they all happened in the 3rd act. The other 2 acts, he could have been anybody. And the last problem I found with Solo: A Star Wars Story falls on its technical side. Besides the choppy editing and the shaky cam sometimes where you can't really make out the action scene, the biggest technical flaw was the lighting. Not only was some of the lighting not fitting for the scene, but I don't know who was handling the lighting, because when the characters are in the foreground, there's so much shadow on them that you can barely make out their faces, and the back is so blown out with light, there's a huge contrast. I'll show you an example. Okay, so look at the way I lit this shot. There's a very bright light behind me, and above me is a secondary light to give the room more light. This is the way a majority of the scenes are lit in Solo: A Star Wars Story. The problem with this is evident if you just pay attention, because there's such a huge contrast from the background to the foreground, and this happens whenever you shine light directly behind an object in front of a camera. There's a huge contrast because all the light is shining from behind, which makes the object a bit dimmer or darker. And it's even more evident if I turn off the light and the only source of light is the one behind me. I would look darker in comparison to the background. See, the thing about bad lighting is that it can completely take you out of a scene. You get so distracted by how dark the character looks and how bright the background is that you're not even paying attention to what's happening in the scene anymore. And that happens multiple times in this film. So overall, Solo: A Star Wars Story was to a certain degree what I expected. I thought it was going to be a mixed bag with more bad than good. Turned out to still be a mixed bag with more good than I expected, but still a whole lot of bad. And it's just, it's okay. But as always, guys, I'm not the end-all be-all opinion when it comes to Solo: A Star Wars Story. I would love to know what you guys thought of the film as well. Do you love it to death? Do you think it's the best Star Wars film you've ever seen? Or do you find it really boring, dull, pathetic, and embarrassing? You just couldn't get into it, and how dare you treat my favorite character like this? And let me know, what other character in the Star Wars universe would you like to see have their very own film? For me, Yoda and Obi-Wan. We all have been begging for an Obi-Wan film. Just make it happen already. Make it a Western. That'd be really cool. I mean, it takes place in Tatooine, for Christ's sakes. It's just begging to be made into a Western. And hire someone who has a Western eye. In fact, take James Mangold, take him off of the Boba Fett project, put him on the Obi-Wan Kenobi project, because 3:10 to Yuma was an excellent Western film, and I think he could kill it with an Obi-Wan film. Comment below, let me know. Stay tuned, I'm currently working on a few videos and I hope to have them out within the coming weeks. I do apologize for the delay, but I do have a special surprise for you guys at the end of this month, so stay tuned for that. And as always, guys, if you'd like to see more videos on this channel, be a part of the Black Critic Crew, please hit that subscribe button below, like this video if you really enjoyed it, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new Black Critic Guy videos, and as always, I'm Tony Waltley II, the stunning man known as the Black Critic Guy, who always shoots first. Till then, peace, YouTube!
I'm so happy the carbonite is gone.